Hello everyone! Welcome to the stream! Hi! Today is a very special stream. Something a little bit different that I had in mind. Let me turn down the volume a bit more for my sake. If I have it up too high, I won't be able to concentrate. And I would not want that today. Today we are going to be discussing Jack the Ripper. And this is something I had planned for quite a while. Hello, hi! It's so good to see you. Welcome. Hello. Okay, this music, man. Don't you start that with me. Hello, hi, welcome. Gotta do some more volume adjustments before we begin. And if there is any issue with the volume, please let me know. I'd rather know sooner than later. The way to beat Eldritch Horrors is to have the oxyphone. The volume, it always defeats me. It always gets the best of me. Let me talk a bit more about what I have planned today. I'm glad you all could make it, by the way. Hello, hi. So today, like I said before, we're going to be discussing Jack the Ripper. This is actually, my homework. So I will be sending this video to my professor afterwards. So I have to make something very clear to you all. I'm even more nervous than usual. Also, something very important I want you all to keep in mind. I need you to be on your best behavior. I already know you guys will. I expect nothing less of you. You all are always awesome. And I appreciate you guys very much. Every single time you guys come into my stream, I've had no issues with you so far, so I don't expect any different. But if there is issues, which, like I said before, I don't expect any different. If there is any issues, I'm gonna be kind of upset. Just a little. Okay? So please behave. And thank you guys a lot in advance. Time to embarrass you in front of your professor? Don't you dare. Come on, be nice. Be the good little babies I know you can be. Come on. So let's just chill out and enjoy the discussion. And if you guys have any bits of information that you know, feel free to input, because like I said, this is a discussion. So if you guys have anything to add, please feel free to add it. Worst case, censor chat and re-upload. You're right, yeah. If something bad does happen, I will make some edits. But hopefully it doesn't come to that. I am not going to call you guys baby sharks. There is no way I'm going to do that to myself. I'm not gonna divulge down that path. Goodness gracious. I wrote a research paper about the Jack the Ripper case, actually, for this same class. And this assignment is basically to add on to that. It's called a radical revision. And so it's basically the fun version of what we did with our research papers. So I get to discuss it normally with you guys now and have a lot more fun with it rather than writing 8 pages over the topic. So a lot of the stuff I'm referencing is going to be directly from my research paper so that I can try to stay on topic. but I'm gonna try to make it to where I'm not just like reading you the research paper, because that's boring and no one wants to sit through a research paper reading because that would suck. I just want to make sure that I stay on track and I don't like do what I usually do and like divulge into different winding paths that end in dead ends. So those of you that have been on my channel for a while, you know how I get with discussions. So I'm gonna try my best to avoid that. I also put my work cited in my description, all of the sources that I used in my research paper, and all of the sources that I'm going to use when talking to you guys. Partially because this is homework, but another reason why I'm doing that is just in case you guys want to go and check out the sources yourselves, feel free. So I definitely recommend checking out casebook.org, which I also put in my description. It's like the first source I used, and it's where I got most of my information, and also some of the images that I'm going to be showing you guys. I also got it from there. It's written by this, it was created by this dude. His name is Ryder. He's super cool. I did some research on him too. He's like the chief editor and producer of the website. So I definitely recommend you guys check that out. It has so much information. It's super cool. That's chill while the source is the same. The way the info gets into our heads is different. Always liked doing that for work. Exactly. It just depends on the relay of information. I'm going to try to make sure it's engaging. And it's Jack the Ripper, so hopefully it's engaging, because that's a super interesting topic. At least it is for me. So, and I want to share to you guys what I've learned, because I learned a lot. Let me pop open my research. I have my research paper over here to the side so that I can reference. I'm trying to be smart and prepared about this, you know. I know it's rare for me to actually be prepared for streams, but I figured I might as well put in the extra effort since this is actually for a grade. And plus I wanna portray this in the best way as possible to you guys, so. Oh great, the volleyball players are here. Thanks. Jeez. Okay, let me try to like do my best to not get distracted by their screaming. Okay, so what I want to start with first, actually, I wanna go over the victims before I actually like delve into the case and the suspects and the evidence. I want to talk about the victims first, because I feel like whenever you think about this case, the first thing you think of is Jack the Ripper and the killer, and stuff like that. I feel like barely anyone thinks about the actual victims rather than just them being a number. Which I understand, because Jack the Ripper is a really famous serial killer, so it can be easy to only center your focus on the killer, but that's why I want to go over the victims first, so you guys can get a basic understanding and realize that each one of these victims, there was a person and a life behind the death. Because me personally, I actually didn't realize how many or the names of the victims until I started researching for my assignment, which was very unfortunate, and I feel kind of bad, but I want to make it up. So let's see. The first woman that was killed, her name was Mary Ann Nichols. I think I have, no, I actually don't. It's unfortunate. I wasn't able to find a picture of her. So there's gonna be some of the victims where I'm missing the pictures, which makes me kind of sad, but you know, the only pictures that were available of some of these women were the post-mortem, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to show that on YouTube. And I especially don't want to show those pictures if any of you guys are like sensitive to that kind of thing. If you guys are curious about the crime scene photos, I believe those are in that casebook.org website that I was talking about. So if you guys want to check those out, then go to that website. But like I said, or I do have a warning for those crime scene photos. The one of the last victim, Mary Jane Kelly, is very brutal. So if you are sensitive to that kind of stuff, I do not recommend looking at that. But if you have no problem with that kind of stuff and you're curious, then go right ahead. I'm just warning you guys that that poor woman, because she was like, I'll get into that later. I'll get into why hers is especially bad later. Hello, hi. It's so good to see you. I'm glad you can make it. I like the new name. I hope your model is turning out great. I know I saw those pictures. It's super cool so far, I have to say. Oh my gosh. When you're finished, please let me know. And whenever you stream with that new model, please let me know, because I really want to see that in motion. Oh yikes, just got to the photo of the victims. Oh yeah. It's super unfortunate. Very, very brutal. But anyways, the first victim was Mary Ann Nicole. I unfortunately don't have a picture or a drawing of her. So she had 5 children with this guy, but they ended up getting separated. And so she ended up like staying at lodging houses. A lot of these victims are similar in a sense that they stayed in a bunch of lodging houses because they didn't really have a solid place to their own. And they also had issues with alcohol and prostitution in order to make ends meet, in order to afford staying in these lodgings. So that's a really common factor amongst these women. And some of them even had families, like Mary did. She had 5 kids. I can always make it. Usually I'm just being lazy, and thanks, me and my buddy are working on it, and I will do that. Awesome. I'm glad you could make it this time. Yeah, she had like 5 kids. And she was desperate for rent money for these lodging houses, so that's why she took up prostitution. And the night before her murder, she was actually denied at a lodging home because she just didn't have the money. And the sad part about this is, since this was the night before her murder, if she had been accepted into this lodging, she most likely would have still been alive today. Or not today, you know. You guys know what I mean. She probably would have lived longer, because since she was rejected from the lodging house because she didn't have the money, she ended up having to go out to try to make the money. And that's what led to her demise, basically. Very unfortunate. I wish I had a picture, but, you know, I don't. But that was the very first victim. So at the time of her murder, the police were on it, but it wasn't like a super public big deal since it was just one murder at the time. But then things started to pick up with the second victim. And her name was Annie Chapman. Let me see if I have a picture. I do have a picture. So this is a picture of Annie Chapman and her former husband. They both had children, and they separated like the first victim did. And so she also had some issues with prostitution and alcoholism. And let me see. So she was apparently feeling pretty unwell. And she was trying to stay at this place called Crossingham's Lodging House. But like the last victim, she was turned away because she didn't have any money. So she left to make the money, and she never made it back. Because, you know, having to go and make the money, it ended with her demise, like the last victim. It's even sadder with this one, I feel like, because you can actually I can actually put a face to the name. Very unfortunate. But since she was the second victim and she was murdered in a similar fashion, that's when things started to pick up. People were catching on. They were like, wow, this is an issue, you know? And then it only got even worse with the third victim. Because the third victim was the one that, like, made everyone start to, like, be afraid and be weary. Because, you know, after 3 victims, it's obvious that there's a serial killer out there, and it's not just a string of coincidence killings. So let's see. The third victim was Elizabeth Stride. And like the first victim, I unfortunately don't have a picture or a drawing of her. The only one I could find was of her post-mortem, which, like I said, is on the casebook.org website, if you want to check that out. Let's see. She also had a husband. But like the other victims, they separated. And after they had separated, that's when she began to drink heavily. That's when her life started going a bit downhill. And during her last night, this guy named Israel Schwartz, I think? I apologize if I'm mispronouncing any of these names, by the way. I have a hard time pronouncing names sometimes. So this guy named Israel Schwartz, he actually saw Stride and another person getting into, like, this domestic hostile situation. Like, apparently this other person was being very, like, aggressive towards her. And he didn't want to get involved. So he just, like, went the other direction in order to avoid the conflict. And it's very possible that he was actually witnessing her murder and he had no idea. That's very possible. Because this was, like, the night of her murder when this happened. So, yeah. Could you imagine being that guy, though? Like, realizing that he like, was witnessing a murder in progress and didn't do anything about it? Could you? I would feel so bad. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine. And then we get to the 4th victim now. We're on victim number 4 of 5. So the 4th woman, her name was Catherine Eddowes. And I actually have a picture. It's not an actual photograph, but this is a sketch of what she looked like. She was involved with a man named Thomas Conway, and even going as far as to start a family with them. But it's unknown whether or not they were married. All we know is that they were partners and they had a family together. I assume they were married, since back then that's usually the practice. If you have a family with someone, you get married back in the day, but you never know. You never know. All it would take is saying that they are with you happens a lot nowadays, where people need you to pretend to be their friends, sad stuff. Yeah, it's super unfortunate. I empathize with these poor victims. I just can't even imagine. And it's even harder that we have like names now. They're no longer just a number. These are like actual people who had actual lives before their deaths. So it's super sad. Let's see. Let me pull up this picture of her again while I talk. So we can have some other visual things going on. So apparently later on, her and Conway separated because apparently, allegedly, Conway was an abusive partner, quote unquote. And then after they separated, she had a new husband whose name was John Kelly. No relation to Mary Jane Kelly, it's just similar names. Hi, welcome to the stream. Hello. We're currently talking about the Jack the Ripper case, and I'm just running through the victims before we delve in. So that's what's happening. Apparently, on the night of her death, her husband, John Kelly, actually warned her about Jack the Ripper. Because he was worried about her. He was like, hey, there's these killings going on, and I need you to be careful. I don't really feel comfortable with you going out. But she reassured him. She was like, nah, it's fine. I'll be okay. And she just continued on her way. But unfortunately, she ended up dying that night, and so that was the last time that he saw her alive. And now we're down to the final victim, or at least the final of the canonical victims, because I know there's a lot of possible other victims, but I'm only going to be discussing the 100% for sure victims. So the final one was Mary Jane Kelly. I do have a sketch of her as well. And by the way, all of these drawings and all of these pictures I got from the casebook.org website that's in my description. So this is a sketch of what Mary Jane Kelly was believed to look like. And not much is known about her. At least outside of her time in Whitechapel. But what is known about her was that her previous husband had died in the mines, and that she also worked at a brothel. Something that's different from her and the other victims was, instead of being found dead in the streets, she was found in her room. And she is famous for being the most brutal of the Jack the Ripper killings. Since she was killed in the privacy of her home, the killer had all the time. It could take as much time as the killer wanted to work at dissecting her, which is like, oh my gosh, it's so bad. I had no idea how bad it was until I saw the crime scene photo. And once again, I'll remind you guys that that crime scene photo is in the casebook.org website that I posted in the description. I do not recommend looking at it if you are faint of heart. It is really, even though it's in black and white, it is still very gruesome and very upsetting. So I just have to warn you guys. I want to make sure you know what you're getting into if you decide to look at this picture. You might get to this later, but do you think all the murders were done by the same person? I'm glad you asked. I will be getting to that later. Very, very observant. Very good question. Especially jarring for the neighborhood to know that happened next door while you slept softly is chilling. Oh my gosh, you have no idea. Continuing on, Apparently she cried murder during her attack. But the people like around the area just ignored her because they believed that it was quote unquote the result of a drunken brawl. And oh my gosh, could you imagine finding out that those cries were actually legitimate after you ignored them? It's just, oh my, it's terrible. It's just true, it's awful. Very, very bad. Very gruesome. It even like scarred the police when they found her body. That's how bad it was. They could barely stand being in there for an extended period of time. That's how bad. Oh my gosh. Oh, I can't even imagine. These poor, but now we know these poor women's names and we have some of their faces in mind. And those of you that did end up looking at the crime scene photos, you have all of their faces in mind. Sadly, that happens more than I'd like to hope. Oh yeah. It sucks, but this stuff, it happens like almost all the time. It's just unbelievable. But luckily, our technology and our investigators are a lot better now than they were back then. Don't even get me started on the incompetence of the Whitechapel police. I know some of them were actually working properly, but oh my gosh, okay. I'm gonna divulge just a little bit. Since this is still kind of technically on the subject, have you guys heard of the Goulston Street graffito? So, allegedly, the killer had written this piece of graffiti on the wall, like above the scrap of an apron that is believed to be from one of the victims. And, the police officer, upon finding this probably crucial bit of evidence, was like, oh, I'm gonna erase it. That's a great idea. And so he got rid of it, and he ended up down the line having to resign because of it, because he got so much backlash, understandably. Let me read this piece of graffiti to you guys. Let me find it, one second. Woolston Street graffito. So, let's see. What does it say? Technology helps solve murders, it doesn't stop them. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't stop them, but it helps solve them. Oh, okay. So it says, the Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing. And of course, there's been a lot of iterations of this thing with different spellings of the word Jews. But the cops' reasoning behind getting rid of it was that it was anti-Semitic, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and he thought it would spark outrage against the Jewish immigrants of the time. So and I guess I can see that side of it too, because tensions were super high between the immigrants and the Whitechapel residents at the time. Tensions were super high, and violence could be started for any reason between those two groups. It was very sad, very unfortunate. So I understand trying to protect the immigrants, but at the same time, the photographers would have been there the next day. I feel like more could have been done to hide the graffiti until the photographer was able to take a picture, but you know, I'll let you guys make your own opinions on that. Tensions are still high, sad to see. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, oh my god, we're a long ways away from the perfect world in that aspect, but at least we've made a lot of progress since then. Thank you guys for indulging in me in that slight little branch. I can continue. So now that I've talked about the victims, I want to go over a bit about a couple of the suspects. And then we'll get into some evidence and stuff like that. I want to talk about this different suspects. Let me like scroll up in my research paper and reference. Actually first, I'm gonna go get a drink since my throat's feeling kind of sore, talking a lot. So hang in there, I'll be right back. Just 1 second, okay? 1 second. Hydration! I am back with beverage. Enjoy your drink? Heck yeah, I will. It's a Mountain Dew, so of course I'm gonna enjoy it. We need to buy some water. We were just at the grocery store today. We should have got water. Oh my god, okay. Eventually, we will remember to get water. I love the face my model makes whenever I take a drink. Because my old model before this one would make that same face too. So I'm glad I'm glad this one, with this one it didn't change. Oh yes, and I've also noticed that my lip sync is slightly better with this one than it was the last one. I'm glad. Oh my gosh, I'm relieved to see it because rigging mouths on live 2D is so freaking hard. But it's worth it because I get to make all these different faces. You haven't had Mountain Dew in months? Dude, change that. Mountain Dew and pretzels. I'm actually unfortunately out of pretzels. Now you kind of want one? Join me! Did I rig the skull? Yes, I did. I did rig the skull. I actually got the idea from my genmate Cress because they talked about some skull emotes for my character in one of their streams. And so they like showed me this picture of like a skull doing different faces and I'm like, that's the best thing I've ever seen. Oh my gosh, music. But yeah, so I'm like, I need this in my life. So I made the skull blink. I also like did other things with the skull. It like changes with the different emotion toggles. Let me see if I can show you guys the different emotion toggles. I gave it a blush for this one. And let's see. I gave it tears. It works for this scared face, and also, I also gave it angry eyes. It also has tears for the sad face too, so. And then I gave it like a shadow and tears for this sick face as well. Simple, very simple things, but sometimes less is more. And I feel like it's good. It's good. Not too overcomplicated. I like the way it turned out, and I'm super glad you guys like it too. You don't know how you're gonna add emotion to a black hole? Ooh, that's a... You could do stickers. Because some people use stickers instead of like changing the face shape for emotion. You could do like little blushy things for flustered emotion. You could do like that water drop thing for worried. You could do like, and then that like little angry X looking thing. I don't know how to describe it, but I recommend like looking into the stickers for emotions and stuff like that. Angry lines above the head. Yes, exactly. Yeah, even though there's not a face to like change the structure of, there's still some options for you. Let me get one more drink and then we can get back on the subject. I'm trying not to make this video too long because my poor professor has to watch it. So I don't want him to have to dig through like 2 hours of video. So I'm gonna try to make this an hour and a half max. That's the plan. Ooh. Oh my gosh. I just realized I haven't had anything to drink all day, so this is like mega refreshing. I need to get better. I'm really bad. Oh my gosh. The black hole in the center scrunches like angry eyebrows. Yes, you should do that. That would be so cute. Big brain. Yeah, so you got options with whatever you decide to do. So don't worry, okay? You got this. You can figure stuff out. And you can look at like emotion stickers online for inspiration or something. Well, now my volume's a little too low. The joys of sound mixing, guys. You could always edit the video down to the research paper parts if you're worried about length. I'll only do that if it like goes longer than an hour and 30 minutes. But yeah, I'll keep that in mind. I'm documenting this. I hope you don't mind your idea. Have a few suns explode where the eyes would be if you wanted a super angry face. Look at you getting all this help from chat. Heck yeah. We support each other on this stream. Supernova eyes. Okay. So now I'm gonna like go over the suspects. I don't really have any strong opinions over who I think it could be. So I'll just go over like some evidence that points to each of these killers, or each of these possible killers. Possible, since we have no idea, and we probably will never have any idea, but I'll let you guys draw your own conclusions by providing you with evidence that goes against them, and also some counter arguments that might prove their innocence. I'll leave it up to you guys. Let me like find the first one I talked about. Okay. So the first one I talked about was this guy. His name was Walter Sickert. I actually have a picture of him, I think. At least I thought I did. Yes, I do. Okay. Yes, here he is. Look at him. He looks so proper with his top hat. It's kind of unfortunate if you think of him possibly being a killer, because he looks like such a gentleman. But it sucks, you know, because you never know who the killer could be. It could be the nicest of people. You never know. He does look kind of smug, doesn't he? But this guy, his name is Walter Sickert. And let me see what I wrote about him. So, if I haven't mentioned before, another thing I'm going to discuss is the Ripper letters. And DNA tests have been taken on some of these letters, at least the ones that haven't randomly disappeared. My music is too loud. That is fantastic. But yeah, the DNA tests have been taken on some of these letters. And there's been like connections between his DNA and the DNA on the letters, or at least his family's DNA. Because the type of data, the DNA testing they used was this testing called mtDNA testing. But unfortunately, this isn't as accurate as nuclear DNA testing, since it just like compares sequences from relatives instead of like directly from the source. So you can't really get a strong read on that, but it's interesting how there was some matches between those. Another unfortunate thing is a lot of these Ripper letters were deemed as hoax. So if he did write any, then there's a chance that he faked Ripper letters. But on the other hand, you know, if these letters are real, then the DNA connects him with those letters. So I'll let you guys draw your conclusions on that. A little bit more about Sickert was he was an artist, and he drew and painted different portrayals of the crime scenes. And people for the longest time thought that these portrayals were way too detailed to be not from the killer, because they like put the crime scene in high detail and stuff like that. But you know, on the other hand, art is highly subjective, so you can't really like base solid evidence off of art. But it's interesting how it's so detailed that people were like, how do you know this stuff? How did you know this was like this? Let me see. What else did I write on Sickert? Oh, so since these killings were like based on rage, there's rumors that Sickert was allegedly impotent, and this could have caused his hatred for women if he were the killer. But on the other side of things, there are other rumors that state the opposite, because people claimed that he was quote unquote an immoralist with a swarm of children, and quote unquote was known to have several mistresses. So, I mean, these aren't solid facts, so you guys can believe which side you can choose to believe. If he was impotent, then that would be a good motive for his hatred over women if he were the killer. But on the other hand, you know, if he really was an immoralist with a swarm of children, that kind of cancels that out. Let me read chat a bit before I get to the next suspect. I'm gonna listen to this in the background while I play games because interesting stuff. Heck yeah! Background streams are awesome. He's smug because he knows he could get away with it. And if he did do it, then he did get away with it. I'm trapped in sound mixing hell. Oh yeah, there's definitely no escape. The worst variety of fan letters. I imagine most people who have to study serial killers get people telling them they might be one. Even as a joke. Yeah, you're right. Bro, I'm sad because my headphones only have sound on the left side. Oh my gosh. That sucks. I hope you can... I hope that either fixes itself or that you could get a new pair soon. I hate it when that happens. It's like the worst thing that could happen to headphones. It's so annoying. Don't mind my model making an evil face as I drank Mountain Dew. You build your own? Oh, that's super cool. Even more painful though, since they broke on you. So let's move on. Oh yeah, it's been like 50 minutes. Yeah, let's definitely like get through this. Oh my gosh, okay, I almost missed something with Sickert. In my research paper, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I like caught this. So now I'm starting to think that he did not do this because there's a big possibility that he was in France at the time of the murders because he had written a letter which discussed his stay in France, and he described it as quote-unquote a nice place to sleep and eat in. So that gives him a pretty strong alibi. Oh, okay. I mean, I'll still leave it up to you guys whether or not you think he did it, but that's a pretty good alibi. The next suspect. His name is Montague John Druitt. He's this guy. Also looks pretty proper. So he taught for the School of Blackheath and gained an inheritance from the death of his father. But things started going downhill a bit after his mother had to be taken away to a mental institution. But, he quote-unquote managed his affairs quite admirably. So he was pretty... even though it was going a little bit downhill after this, he was still doing okay. And he was still, like, smart about all of his assets and stuff like that. And even though he's, like, one of the most famous suspects, along with a couple others, there isn't actually much evidence against him. But there are some eyewitness accounts that claim to see a man that matched the appearance of Druitt around the victims right before the time of the murders. But, you know, some of these accounts list some different traits, and some describe different hair colors and different body types. So even though they were similar to his physique, they weren't too accurate. And besides, even if he was seen around some of the victims were prostitutes, so there's also a chance that even if he was with them, he could have just been a client. So, since the women worked with a lot of men, you can't really, unless like the guy was seen in the process of murdering the victim, you can't really base who was the killer off of the fact that, oh, they were in the same area around the same time this one time, you know. Honestly, with a haircut like that, I'd assume he was the killer. Like, bro, he got his hair parted so far apart I can ride a boat between each wing if I poured. Thanks for that mental image. That was awesome. Oh my gosh, okay. But he's walking. Oh my gosh. Maybe it's very unfortunate that you say that, because unfortunately this dude actually like ended up committing suicide by drowning, and his body was actually like found in this stream or a creek by authorities. But one of the biggest pieces of evidence that go against him is how he died right after the canonical murders stopped happening. So that's like a major reason why people have been looking like suspiciously at him and why he was a suspect. He ended up committing suicide because his mental health was apparently on a downward slope. Because he was kicked out of Blackheath, and things were just going really badly for him, and so he was just, it was going downhill. Something that could prove his innocence, though, was how the killer would have had to have good knowledge of the streets in order to not get caught, and would have most likely have had to live in the general area. And both of these things were not traits that Druitt had. If he were the killer, he would have had to ride the train back home after committing murders, and he would have been caught because he would have had to wait for hours around the area. So that could show why. Call me Mysterio because the glass ball on my head glowing and telling me the future. He definitely wouldn't have got the help he needed. So sad. And either way, yeah, no. Back then, stuff like depression and those issues, they were not well known. And also, they were believed to like be only with women at the time, and it was called like hysteria, I think. So if a guy felt that way, it usually wasn't paid much attention to, which is really unfortunate. It was really sad. So I'm glad we got better. I'm glad society has evolved in those aspects, and so now people can actually get the help they need and stuff like that. So I think I have one more suspect for you before I go into some of the theories. Let me get another drink. Why do my eyebrows look so angry every time I take a drink? Alright. Well, so the last suspect that I'm gonna talk about, because there's a lot of suspects, but the last one I'm going to talk about was Aaron Kosminski. And it's weird because he's like he's another one of the biggest suspects, yet there's only one piece of evidence against him. So let me see. I don't think I have a picture. No, I don't have a picture of him. So he was like... So there was this shawl, okay? There's a shawl, and that's the only piece of evidence that goes against him. I must go have a fun stream, have fun. Thank you! Have a nice day. Thank you for coming. I'm glad you liked it. Spicy Mountain Dew. So this shawl belonged to one of the murder victims. I think, yeah, it was Catherine Edo's shawl, and it was covered in blood. And so here's another example of the ignorance from the police at the time. And they were like, so an officer saw this shawl and was like, this would be a super funny gag gift for my wife. And so the dude took the shawl home, and the wife, of course, was mortified. So she just threw it in a box, and it stayed in that box unwashed for a century until it was sold at an auction. And the person that bought it had it tested for DNA evidence, and it was the mtDNA stuff like usual. And so apparently it found matching strands of DNA with Kosminski, along with some other fluids that was believed to belong to Kosminski. And a big thing that the scientist that tested the DNA found and was super excited about was how they thought that this matching DNA sequence contained a rare mutation, 314C. But, you know, there's always another side, a counter argument. And the counter argument to this rare mutation was the fact that the scientist did not double check his work before posting. And it later turned out that there was no rare mutation. It was just the very common 315-1C mutation, which threw that argument out the window. And also, on the other hand, to go along with the other fluids that was found on the shawl, you know, the shawl belonged to a prostitute, so it kind of makes sense how there was those fluids on there, you know. So, if anything, if Kosminski did have contact with this woman, then most likely he was just a client and nothing more. But, you know, there's always that chance. You never know. He very well could have been the murderer, and we most likely will never find out. But that's why we look at these things and we do our own research so we can form our own conclusions. So those were the three suspects that I wanted to discuss. There's two extra theories that I want to talk about. The first theory is how there's a possibility that multiple people could have been involved. Because some of these murders were handled in different ways, despite being the same motive and stuff like that. Let me see what I wrote about this theory. Let me see. Okay, so I said, I'm just trying to like find the reference to this in my research paper. So there was like 2 murders on the same day. One of the murders was Catherine Eddowes. I think it's Catherine Eddowes. Yep, Catherine Eddowes. And Elizabeth Stride. They were both murdered on the same night in the same way. But these women had 2 different cut types. And since both of these women were canonical Jack the Ripper victims, since they were done on the same night in slightly different cut patterns, this could tie into the theory that it's possible there were multiple people involved. Did I write anything else about that theory? I don't think I did. Another theory was a possibility that a woman could have been involved in the killings. Because if a woman was involved, she could have been a midwife, she could have been an abortionist, so that she would have been able to have that knowledge of anatomy, since these victims were dissected in such a way that only someone with that knowledge could have done it. And the biggest piece of evidence that points towards the fact that a woman could have been involved was with the last victim, Mary Jane Kelly. She was believed to be pregnant at the time of her death, and allegedly wanted to get an abortion. And so when her body was found, her clothes were also found folded neatly in a chair beside her bed. So she could have been, oh my gosh, music, stop. She could have been preparing for a routine abortion at the time. And that's when the killer could have caught her off guard and committed the murder, because the killer had access to her home. And so that kind of makes sense if the killer was a woman who was an abortionist or a midwife. Like I said before, I don't have any strong opinions. I just think it's super interesting and also something to keep in mind. There's also a possibility that a man and a woman could have been working together. So the man could have handled like more brutal aspects of the killings. He could have been the one to lure in the victims. Since they were prostitutes, they probably wouldn't have had anything to do with a woman. Unlike Mary Jane Kelly, who was probably just trying to do a routine abortion. So he could have been luring in the victims and stuff like that. They could have been working together. They could have been two completely different killers. You never know. It's just something kind of neat to keep in mind. A cool little theory. I mean, if it's all local, it makes sense why well-off people would visit the same places. I'm sure some bumped into each other and made recommendations. What was the religious sphere like at the time? Was the populace generally dismissive of vices like lust and sloth? Seems more like NYC levels of mind your own business. Didn't seem overly religious, especially as the area is so used to drunken brawls. I think it depends on location, because some parts of London were probably super religious and other parts were probably lesser. And I think Whitechapel at the time wasn't very, like, substantial. So it was, like, just... I think it was, like, somewhat neutral. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. That's just my opinion. Based off of context clues. But, you know, even in religious areas, there's bound to be things like alcoholism and prostitution and stuff like that, so you can't really, like, base that off of that, so I'm gonna get a drink before I continue. Okay. I'm gonna talk a little bit before I end the stream. I want to talk a little bit about the letters, the Ripper letters. So the most famous letters are the Dear Boss letters, which actually created the name Jack the Ripper. Let me see if I can pull up a transcript of this letter so I can read it to you guys. Dear Boss letter. Let me see. Yeah, it was super famous. It could be real. It could be a hoax. A lot of people think it was just a hoax created by journalists to continue, like, the spark of interest within the populace. But there's grounds on both sides whether or not it's real or not. People say it's like one of the few letters that could be real. I personally think it might just be like a hoax or something, but it's still cool to read and to look at since it's like a big part of history. And since it gave Jack the Ripper the name, Jack the Ripper. And you know, there's still always that slight possibility that it could be real. I'll read it to you guys and you guys can form your own opinion on it. This is the Dear Boss letter. It says, Dear Boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. That joke about Leather Apron gave me real fits. I am down on whores and I shan't quit ripping them until I do get buckled. Grand work the last job was. I gave the lady no time to squeal. How can they catch me now? I love my work and I want to start again. You will soon hear of me with my funny little games. I saved some of the proper red stuff in a ginger beer bottle over the last job to write with, but it went thick like glue and I can't use it. Red ink is fit enough, I hope, haha. The next job I do, I shall clip the lady's ears off and send to the police officers just for a jolly, wouldn't you? Keep this letter back till I do a bit more work. Then give it out straight. My knife's so nice and sharp, I want to get to work right away, if I get the chance. Good luck. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper. Don't mind giving me the trade name. P.S. Wasn't good enough to post this before I got all the red ink off my hands, curse it. No luck yet. They say I'm a doctor now. So that was the Dear Boss letter. And the biggest thing that points to the possibility of this letter being real is the fact that how the next victim after this letter was found had or it was like after this letter was published, like the dates were like mixed up and that's like a reason why it's cloudy. But like around the same time that another victim was found dead, her ear was clipped. Her ear was removed, but the ear wasn't sent to the police. But it was clipped, so that's pretty interesting. Older English makes it sound more creepy. Formal killers have that crazy strong feel to them. I know, right? So that was that one. The Dear Boss letter. There was like a postcard. I don't remember what it was called though, but it was like, I think it was written by the same person that wrote the Dear Boss letter. Oh, the Saucy Jackie postcard. I'll read that one to you as well, because it was written by the same person. It says, I was not codding, dear old boss, when I gave you the tip. You'll hear about Saucy Jackie's work tomorrow. Double event this time. Oh my gosh, hold on. Let me take another drink. My throat's feeling kind of sore. I was not codding, dear old boss, when I gave you the tip. You'll hear about Saucy Jackie's work tomorrow. Double event this time. Number one squealed a bit. Couldn't finish straight off. Had not time to get ears off for police. Thanks for keeping the last letter back till I got to work again. Jack the Ripper. So evidence that could point to this one being real was how the double event is talking about both Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes, who were, like I said before, were killed on the same day. So these could be hoax. These could be real. I'll let you guys have that opinion. But a letter I'm really interested in is the last letter I'll talk about, and then I'll wrap up the video. It's called the From Hell letter. And this one was written, it's also like one of 3 letters that has the most grounds for the possibility of being real. The other 2 being the Dear Boss letters and stuff like that. So, this letter was written by a different person. Obviously, the handwriting is very different. And the person that wrote it was either faking illiteracy or was actually, like, illiterate. Because there's lots of grammatical issues and stuff like that. I'll read you the letter as best as I can. It says, "From hell, Mr. Lusk. Sore, I send you half the kidney I took from one woman, preserved it for you. To their peace, I fried and ate it. Was very nice. I may send you the bloody knife that took it out if you only wait a while longer. Signed, Catch me when you can, Mr. Lusk." So this one, the reason why this one is believed to possibly be real is, so you know how it mentions a kidney in the letter? Well, that's because when the letter was received, it was also received with a package that contained a human kidney that was believed to belong to one of the victims. Which victim, actually? Which victim? Let me see if I can see which victim this kidney was from. Did I write it in my research paper? Oh yeah. So the kidney was believed to belong to Catherine Eddowes. Hi, welcome back. We're just talking about the Ripper letters and how the From Hell letter was received with a human kidney that was believed to belong to one of the victims. So that's a reason why that letter is believed to be real. I personally think that letter is real. That's my opinion, but like I said before, I'll let you guys form your own opinions on it. I just think that's super interesting. And it also, the illiteracy part kind of connects with the Goulston Street graffito that I mentioned earlier, because the Goulston Street graffito was this anti-Semitic piece of graffiti that was very butchered. It was like, had like grammatical errors and misspellings of the word Jews. So those two kind of connect. And unfortunately, we won't ever know if that piece of graffiti matched the handwriting to this letter, because that police officer that got rid of the graffiti before it was photographed. So that's super frustrating. But there's still that connection there. I just think that's super cool and something to think about. Let me see if I'm missing anything. One second. I don't want to miss anything. I want to make sure I covered everything that I know. So that was basically, I think that was all the information I have. I have links in the description for my sources where you can find even more information if you're interested. What do you guys think? What's your opinions? I want to know. I want to hear your opinions. What do you guys think about this subject? Any ideas from you guys? I'm very interested in hearing your viewpoints, because I find this stuff like super fascinating, and I love looking at other people's different viewpoints because people have different opinions and you can get new information from different people, from different perspectives and stuff like that. I think that's super cool. Yeah, plus serial graffiti artist tag over and over. No reason to destroy evidence anyway, just idiocy. Definitely. I'm so upset with the police at the time. My crackhead theory is there were multiple killers riffing off the same initial murder. That's a good theory. Because like I said before, there is a chance that multiple people were involved. That's very interesting. Because you would never, because like people for the longest time have just thought, Jack the Ripper, one killer, a man, but they never take into, oh, there is something I forgot. These people never take into account that it could possibly be a woman, because they're always quick to dismiss it. They're like, women aren't capable of that much brutality. And I acknowledge the fact that if a woman was to murder, most likely they would use other means like poison and stuff like that, less brutal ways, but I'm not gonna dismiss that theory because it's definitely a possibility. I don't know if, because there's like, I don't know if she did it, but there's this woman by the name of Mary Piercy. This woman. She brutally murdered her husband and her son in a similar fashion as the Jack the Ripper murders. So she was like executed after the murders stopped. So it's possible that she could have been involved. But even if she wasn't involved, her case proves the fact that women are in fact capable of that level of brutality. So that's just another thing to think about. Potentially the original perp murdered multiple times, but there definitely seems to be multiple variations. Exactly. And that's why there's a whole bunch of other victims that are non-canonical, but alleged victims of the Jack the Ripper killings. Axe murders say otherwise. Oh yeah, yeah, because like women, you can't, I hate it when people dismiss that theory, because women are totally capable of that level of brutality. So it's upsetting to see people think otherwise. If you dismiss that theory, then that could come to haunt you later on, because then no one would suspect it, and and then she'll get you. You gotta be careful. But yeah, so Mary Piercy, that's someone else to keep in mind. Did I write anything else about her? I wonder if I wrote anything else about her. I have like 7 pages of this stuff, so that's why it's taking me a while to comb through my references. It's really interesting to hear you guys' theories, though. I really appreciate it. That's the face of woman who... Fair point. Fair point. It's scary stuff. Lots of different possibilities. I don't think I wrote anything else about Mary Piercy. But yeah, that's just... I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm gonna end it here so that I don't give my poor professor too much to dig through. And I basically covered everything I wanted to cover. I really hope you guys enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun. I love talking to you guys about this stuff. I might actually do more stuff like this in the future. It would be few and far between, though, since I have to do a lot of research before I come out here and do stuff like this, because it took an entire research paper for me to get to this point right now. So, but yeah, that might be something cool to do in the future. I'm glad you all liked it. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I was worried at first, but the more I talk to you guys, the less I worried about it, so. Have you heard of podcasts such as Sword and Scale or Last Podcast on the Left? I have not, but I'll check them out eventually if you recommend them. I like stuff like that, so. Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna end this here. I'll check out those podcasts later when I have time because things are kind of busy since it's nearing the end of the school year. But I'll let you know what I think whenever I get to watching it. But thank you guys so much for coming to my homework assignment. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope it wasn't boring. I hope I was engaging. Time to do my usual end of video spiel. If you want to see more content from me, subscribe. I do things like creepypasta readings, SCP readings, stuff like this. I want to do more in the future. And if computer stuff works properly, I do video games too. And I also like mostly play video games with my VTuber group Genmates. I have their links and stuff in the description as well if you want to check any of them out. They're awesome. I definitely recommend you go watch some of their videos. I snatched the links from Yoru because Yoru's descriptions are super organized, so I give credit to Yoru for the ALALA VTuber group links because they're super organized and nice. I always update on Twitter and Discord, so if you want to be a part of my community, or if you want to talk to me, or if you want to see my updates or see anything I post, the links for those are in my description as well. If any of the links are broken, please let me know because I've had issues with that in the past. Thank you guys again so much for coming. This was awesome. I'm glad I could talk about this stuff with you guys. It's super fun. I might do more of this stuff in the future, so be on the lookout. Thursday, not next Thursday, but this Thursday, I'm gonna do a collab stream with my Genmates. We're gonna be playing video games like Pico Park and Among Us since Cress missed out last stream, so be on the lookout for that as well. It's gonna be super fun. I'll keep you guys updated, and I'll see you guys on Thursday. Goodbye.